Right now in the NBA, we are, of course, very much in trade season. This is the time of the year where teams are looking to break their teams down or build them up for a potential title run. And for a lot of the offseason, the Philadelphia 76ers were a team that we were talking about a lot with trades as they were trying to figure out the James Harden trade. But I feel like them as a trade destination hasn't been discussed nearly as much as it needs to be. Really quickly, though, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Prize Picks. With a ton of NBA games every night and the start of the NFL playoffs, now is a fantastic time to get started with Prize Picks. The way it works is you go onto the site and you pick between 2 and 6 selections for any number of sports, any number of different stats, whether it be receiving yards, rushing yards, touchdowns, sacks, any NBA stats as well. And you just pick more or less for each of these selections. Right now, Prize Picks has introduced something new as well. You can see these demons and goblins logos next to these numbers here, which allows you to win up to 100 times your money. For example, you can see that this number is higher than it typically would be, which means that it's going to be more difficult to get correct. But if you're able to do it, you get a higher payout. So as you're scrolling through looking at these numbers, make sure you're paying attention to these little logos as well to increase your payout. Now, if you want to get started with Prize Picks, I have an offer for you. When you click the link in the description and use code SPORTING, you get a 100% deposit match up to $100 for new depositors. Again, that is a 100% deposit match up to $100 when you click the link in the description and you use code SPORTING. Make sure to take advantage of those Demon and Goblins entries as well. And thank you again to Prize Picks for sponsoring this video. Now, there's a couple of different reasons for this. Obviously, Philadelphia has been really, really good to begin the season, and honestly, better than I thought that they would be, given the fact that Embiid has been in and out of the lineup and obviously missing, James Harden with the trade before the year and not really having a replacement for that guy in terms of what they traded him away for. But Tyrese Maxey has been unbelievable. Embiid has been probably the MVP of the league when he's played, and those two guys together are averaging like over 60 points a game. That's incredibly difficult to do and provides them a foundation on a night-to-night basis where they can beat literally any team in the league. And then they have a handful of, decent role player wings, guys like Kelly Oubre that are out there for them. Tobias Harris has been fine, but this is a team that the whole plan, the whole time that they've had Daryl Morey there has been, let's try and go compete for the title. And it feels like a team that is being overlooked in two different ways. One, as a potential title threat, and two, as a team that can make a move at the deadline to potentially put themselves in an even better spot to go and get a title. Now, their trade asset situation is a little bit weird because they do have some stuff from the Harden trade. It's very easy for them to match salaries, which is nice. They have Tobias Harris. They have a handful of expirings from the Harden trade in the first place, guys like Covington, Batum, Morris, those guys, but they don't really have control over their own picks, at least not very many of them. And then some of the picks they have from other teams aren't super valuable either. So if you're thinking about them as a trade possibility, it's hard for them to get someone, for example, like Donovan Mitchell. Like, it's hard for them to get one of those guys because their assets are pretty limited. Not to mention, I'm not sure you would want to put Mitchell alongside Maxey. I'm not sure that's really, the best thing for either of those guys. But as a potential upgrade situation, they could be a Zach LaVine team. That's probably not a better fit than Mitchell and Maxey, but from a cost perspective, it wouldn't cost that much. I wouldn't be shocked if there was a Tobias Harris plus picks for Pascal Siakam swap. That wouldn't surprise me at all, because another thing to keep in mind here for Philadelphia that we're constantly reminded of with them is they would like to have some salary cap space this offseason. Tobias Harris's contract is going to come off, and unless it is for someone like Siakam that they would obviously plan on re-signing in the offseason, they would like to continue to retain some of that salary cap space for some of that flexibility this upcoming offseason, which is another thing to keep in mind with their trade stuff. But really the thing with Philadelphia is it feels like they need to be discussed more as a possible trade destination. It feels like, if people are talking about LaVine or Mitchell or Siakam, it's a lot of other teams in Philadelphia doesn't really seem to get mentioned. And maybe part of that is because, the LaVine Mitchell fit alongside Maxey isn't great, and they're keeping Maxey. They're not going to trade away Tyrese Maxey. For whatever reason, people don't really seem to be all that interested in a potential Pascal Siakam trade. I think that's a really, really interesting scenario. I think him alongside Embiid in Philadelphia would be really, really cool. And he's a really good player. I mean, he's been an all-NBA caliber guy the last couple of seasons, or at least borderline all-NBA caliber guy. But for whatever reason, Philadelphia just doesn't really seem to get discussed that much in all these trade situations. Maybe it's just a little bit of fatigue because we feel like we're always talking about Philadelphia in the middle of the year in terms of a possible trade, but it's been one of the more underrated storylines of the season so far, how good they've been after the Harden trade and how well positioned they are to still continue to add and improve to this roster. And given some of the assets that they have and the situation that Philadelphia is in at this point, I would be surprised if they went beyond the deadline without like a semi-major change to this team. It seems strange because of how successful they've been, but this feels like a roster that is incomplete and has been incomplete since they traded away Harden. And it's not really a situation where they can just afford to go throughout the year and look at a possible major change and then just completely ignore it. And maybe the weirdest part of people not really talking about Philadelphia as a trade destination is that there's probably no team in the league that's more motivated to have a good run of the postseason this year than the Sixers, because there are definitely teams kind of circling the waters on a possible, Joel Embiid wants out of Philadelphia situation. I think it was kind of revealing that the Knicks were willing to trade some of their stuff to go get OG Anunoby, maybe with the mindset that they're going to be able to get Joel Embiid, in the future. I think it was kind of revealing that they had the opportunity to keep some of those guys, maybe go out and get someone like Donovan Mitchell, yet they prioritized wing depth and are clearly building a team in New York that would fit really, really well with Joel Embiid, put in that position at the 5 spot there for the Knicks. So Philly certainly is going to be motivated this year. And Daryl Morey, his entire career has been about chasing a title. He's always been trying to put together stars and put together competent teams that can win a title. And he's been close before. And the Sixers team certainly is capable. They have some issues in terms of, if Embiid or Maxey are having an off night or they aren't playing, offensively things can look really, really rough. And Maxey's still really good, but not necessarily one of those like top tier level guards where you can just say, hey, here's the ball, go do whatever you need to and put together really good offense for us. Like in the games that Embiid doesn't play, sometimes they have some really rough ones. So definitely still some things to address there in Philadelphia, but this is going to be a very motivated team, I think, at the deadline. And I would be really, really surprised if we get to the deadline and past it and this Sixers team looks the exact same. It's just set up too well for them with all the expiring contracts that they have, with the big expiring of Tobias Harris as well, with some of these future draft picks as well. I just would be surprised if they did nothing and then, lost in the second round or something in the postseason. There's just too much on the line for this team. And again, I think maybe the reason this isn't being discussed is just because it's been such a dramatic situation. This probably been the most dramatic franchise in the NBA over the last handful of seasons, with constant, trade requests and the rosters changing. I mean, no team has traded for and traded away more stars over the last 5 years than the Sixers have. And it just feels like a very under the radar team. It feels like an underappreciated team. It feels like Embiid's season is being underappreciated as well. And at the end of the day, if they're able to add another piece here, whether it be Siakam, whether it be another guard to help them with their scoring, this is a team that I would be nervous to play in the postseason. Absolutely. This is a team that would scare me if I was one of the other contenders, in the Eastern Conference. Honestly, at this exact moment in time, I think I like Philly more than Milwaukee. I don't like them more than Boston, but I definitely have some issues with the Bucks, especially defensively, some stuff I've talked about on some of the other channels that I have as well. So that, for me, is really kind of the main motivation for this video. Is let's not overlook Philadelphia. Let's definitely talk about them as a trade candidate here, because there's a lot of guys that are going to be available that I think could fit their team really well. Even if it isn't one of the star level guys, like I think Caruso would be a really good fit for them as well. Any of the wings in Brooklyn could potentially be an upgrade on any of the wings that they have there in Philadelphia right now. Mikal Bridges would be a super interesting fit for this team. So there's just a lot of options in Philadelphia. And the point of all this is just to say, let's not overlook the Sixers.